Ignatius opened his eyes and saw white floating above him. "So, you finally woke up, boy," his mother's voice said near him. "Where am I?" Ignatius turned his head and looked about him. He was lying in a little cell formed by screens on either side. He saw a nurse pass by the foot of the bed. "Good heavens! I'm in a hospital! Who is my doctor? I hope that you have been selfless enough to secure the services of a specialist and a priest. Have one come. I'll see whether he's acceptable." "Oh, shut up and take a look at this!" Mrs. Riley almost shouted, throwing a newspaper on Ignatius's bandage. "Nurse!" Mrs. Riley tore the newspaper from his face and slapped her hand over his mustache. "Now shut up and take a look at this here paper." Her voice was cracking. "We're ruined." Under the headline that said "Wild Incident on Bourbon Street," Ignatius saw 3 photographs lined up together. On the right, Darlene with her ball gown was holding the cockatoo and smiling a starlit smile. On the left, Lana Lee covered her face with her hands as she climbed into the rear seat of a squad car. Patrolman Mancuso, in a torn suit and a hat with a bent rim, purposefully held open the door of the car. In the center, the doped Negro was grinning at what looked like a dead cow lying in the street. Ignatius scrutinized the center photograph through slitted eyes. "Just look at that!" he thundered. "What sort of clods does that newspaper employ on its photographic staff? My features are barely distinguishable." "Read what it says underneath the picture, boy." Mrs. Riley stuck a finger into the newspaper as if she meant to lance the photograph. A stripper's bird had attacked a hot dog vendor wearing a costume. A. Mancuso, undercover, had arrested Lana Lee for soliciting and for possession of and posing for pornography. Burma Jones, porter, had led A. Mancuso to a cabinet under the bar where pornographic materials were discovered. A. Mancuso told reporters that he had been working on the case for some time, that he had already contacted one of the Lee woman's agents. Police suspect that the arrest of the Lee woman broke a citywide high school pornography distribution syndicate. Police found a list of schools in the bar. A. Mancuso said that the agent would be sought. Ignatius Jacques Riley, 30, was removed to a hospital to be treated for shock. "It's our bad luck. They had a photographer hanging around doing nothing they could send out to take a picture of you laying in the street like a drunk bum." Mrs. Riley began to sniffle. "I must have damaged some vital part when I fell to the street." "You just scraped your head a little. There's nothing wrong with you. They took x-rays." "Have people been fooling with my body while I was unconscious? You might have had the good taste to stop them. Heaven knows where these salacious medical people have been probing." Ignatius now realized that in addition to the head and ear, an erection had been bothering him ever since he had awakened. It was demanding attention. "Would you mind leaving my booth for a moment while I inspect myself to see whether I've been mishandled? 5 minutes should be sufficient." "Look, Ignatius." Mrs. Riley rose from the chair and grabbed Ignatius by the collar of the clown-like dotted pajamas. "Don't act smart with me, or I'll slap your face off. Angelo told me all about it. A boy with your education, bumming around with funny people down in the quarter, going into a barroom to look for a lady of the evening." Mrs. Riley cried, "We'd have to move out of town." "You're the one who introduced my innocent being to that den of a bar. Actually, it's all the fault of that dreadful girl, Myrna. She must be punished for her misdeeds." "Murder!" Mrs. Riley sobbed. "She ain't even in town. I heard enough of your crazy stories already about how she got you fired out of Levy pants. You can't do this to me no more. You're crazy, Ignatius. Even if I gotta say it, my own child's out of his mind." "You look rather haggard. Why don't you push someone aside and crawl into one of the beds around here and take a nap? Call again in about an hour." "I've been up all night. When Angelo rang me up and said you was in the hospital, I almost took a stroke." Mrs. Riley reached down next to her chair and picked from the floor the large volume of The Consolation of Philosophy. She aimed one of its corners at Ignatius's stomach. "Angelo found it in that bar room last night," Mrs. Riley said boldly. "Someone stole it off him in the toilet." "God, this has all been arranged," Ignatius screamed, rattling the huge edition in his paws. "I see it all now. I told you long ago that mongoloid Mancuso was our nemesis. Now he has struck his final blow. How innocent I was to lend him this book. Now how I've been duped." He closed his bloodshot eyes and slobbered incoherently for a moment. "Taken in by a Third Reich strumpet, hiding her depraved face behind my very own book, the very basis of my worldview. Oh, Mother, if you only knew how cruelly I've been tricked by a conspiracy of subhumans. Ironically, the Book of Fortuna itself is bad luck. Oh, Fortuna, you degenerate wanton. Oh, shut up! Mrs. Riley shouted, her powdered face lined by anger. Get up out of that bed, Mrs. Riley hollered. She snatched at the pajamas, but the body was sunken into the mattress like a meteor. Get up before I smack your fat face off! When he saw his mother's purse rising over his head, he sat up. Her eyes were steely, her lips thin and firm. Everything was going wrong. Mr. Clyde looked at the morning paper and fired Riley. The Big Ape's career as a vendor was finished. Why was that baboon wearing his outfit when he was off duty? Hot dog vendors had an image problem already, without one of them passing out in the street by a whorehouse. Santa Battaglia held the newspaper up to her mother's picture and said, How do you like that, babe? How do you like the way your grandson Angelo made good? You like that, darling? She pointed to another photograph. How you like poor Irene's crazy boy lying there in the gutter like a washed-up whale? Ain't that sad? The girl's got to get the boy away this time. You think any man's going to marry Irene with that big bum laying around the house? Of course not. Santa snatched at her mother's picture and gave it a moist smack. Take it easy, babe. George had to give it to that Mancuso guy. He was really on the ball. George wondered if his name was on the list the cops had found in the cabinet. If it was, it might be a good idea to visit his uncle who lived on the coast. Even then, they'd have his name. He really didn't have enough money to go anywhere. The best thing was to stay home for a while. That Mancuso might spot him if he went downtown. George's mother turned off the vacuum cleaner and answered the door. The police? George heard his mother asking at the door. You must have the wrong apartment. George started for the kitchen before he realized that there was nowhere to go. The apartments in the housing project had only one door. Lana Lee tore the newspaper into shreds and then tore the shreds into smaller shreds. The matron stopped by the cell to tell her to clean it up. Lana screamed through the bars. I just been through one fucking hell of a night. I got my rights. You can't sneak me in here. The matron smiled at her and walked away. Jones spread the newspaper on the bar of Maddie's Ramble Inn and blew some smoke at it. Hoo-hoo-hoo, he said to Mr. Watson. You sure give me a good idea with all this sabotage crap. Now I sabotage myself right back to being a vagrant. Well, look like this sabotage go off like a nuclear bomb. That fat freak a guarantee 100% nuclear bomb shit. Drop him onto somebody, everybody getting caught in the fallout, getting their ass blowed up. Woo-wee! Night of joy really turned into a zoo last night. Everybody fighting and scratching and screaming, and that big fat freak laying in the gutter like he dead. Looked like a barroom fight in a western movie. Looked like a gang rumble. Police driving up, dragging off that Lee bastard. Hey, turn out she don't have no pal at the precinct anyways. Maybe they be hauling in some of them orphans she been sponsoring. Woo-wee! Who say a colored cat can't get his picture on the front page? Woo-woo! Woo-woo! I gonna be the most famous vagrant in the city. You got any plan for getting you a job, Jones? Jones blew a dark cloud, a storm warning, and said, After the kind of job I just had working below the minimum wage, I really deserve a pay vacation. Ooh-wee! Where am I going to find me another job? Too many colored mothers dragging their ass around the street already. Woo-woo! Getting your ass gainfully employed ain't exactly the easiest thing in the world. Well, things can always be worse off. Maybe I'll be that fat mother. Oh, whatever going to happen to somebody like that? Hey, hey. Mr. Levy settled into the yellow nylon couch and unfolded his paper, which was delivered to the coast every morning at a higher subscription rate. Having the couch all to himself was wonderful, but the disappearance of Miss Trixie was not enough to brighten his spirits. Gus Levy looked at the pictures and the article on the front page and whistled through his teeth. Oh, boy. I just found Mr. Riley. Really? Bring it over here. I've always wondered about that young idealist. I guess he's received some civic award. Mrs. Levy looked at the two women, the bird, the grinning doorman. Where is he? I don't see any idealist. Mr. Levy indicated the stricken cow in the street. That's him? In the gutter? This is tragic. Carousing, drunken, hopeless, already a bloated derelict. Mark him down in your book next to Miss Trixie and me as another life you've wrecked. Well, I'm going into town right now to speak with this Riley. I'll get this crazy letter business straightened out. If you're going into town, take me with you. I'm worried about Miss Trixie. While Mrs. Levy was blinding herself with layers of aquamarine eyeshadow in preparation for her errand of mercy, he got the sports car out of the monumental three-car garage. Little darts of heartburn pricked about in his chest. Riley had to make some kind of confession. Abelman shysters could wipe him out. He couldn't give his wife the satisfaction of seeing that happen. If Riley would confess to writing the letter, he would change. He would vow to become a new person. He might even give the company a little supervision. When they had passed the factory, and Mrs. Levy had gazed at it and said, "Sad, sad," they turned along the river and stopped before a dazed-looking wooden apartment building. "Don't take too long," Mrs. Levy said while she was going through the heaving and lifting process that was necessary to remove one's body from a sports car. "Good luck with the idealist. Don't let him play another trick on you." Mr. Levy sped off uptown till he found the miniature house. Could the huge kook live in such a dollhouse? How did he get in and out of the front door? Mr. Levy climbed the steps and read the "Peace at Any Price" sign tacked to one of the porch posts of the house. This was the place, all right. Inside, the telephone was ringing. "They're not home," a woman screamed from behind a shutter next door. "The telephone's been ringing all morning." The front shutters of the adjoining house opened, and a harried-looking woman came out on the porch and rested her red elbows on her porch rail. "Do you know where Mr. Riley is?" Mr. Levy asked her. "All I know is he's all over this morning's paper. Where he ought to be is in an asylum. My nerves are shot to hell. When I moved next to them people, I was signing my death warrant." Does he live here alone?" A woman answered the phone once when I called. "That must have been his mama. Her nerves are shot, too. She must have went to get him out of the hospital or wherever they got him. What do you want with him? Is he in some kind of trouble?" "I'm Gus Levy. He used to work for me." "Yeah, you don't say. That crazy Ignatius was sure proud of that job he had at that place. I used to hear him telling his mama how he was really making good." "Yeah, he made good. A few weeks and he was fired." "Well, if he worked for you, you really know him good." Had that poor Riley kook really been proud of Levy Pants? He'd always said that he was. That was one good sign of his insanity. Tell me, hasn't he been in trouble with the police? Doesn't he have some kind of police record?" "His mama had a policeman coming around her, a regular undercover agent, but not that Ignatius. For one thing, his mama likes her little nip. I don't see her drunk much lately, but for a while there, she was really going good. But let me tell you something, I gotta be fair. That Ignatius was okay until that big dog of his died. He had this big dog used to bark right under my window. That's when my nerves first started to go. Then the dog dies. Well, I think now maybe I'll get some peace and quiet. But no, Ignatius has got the dog laid out in his mama's front parlor with some flowers stuck in its paw. That's when him and his mama first started all that fighting. To tell you the truth, I think that's when she started drinking. So Ignatius goes over to the priest and asks him to come say something over the dog. The priest says no, of course. And I think that's when Ignatius left the church. So big Ignatius puts on his own funeral. A big, fat high school boy ought to know better. You see that cross? Mr. Levy looked hopelessly at the rotting Celtic cross in the front yard. That's where it all happened. He had about 24 little kids standing around in that yard watching him, and Ignatius had on a big cape like Superman, and there were candles burning all over, and the whole time his mama was screaming out the front door for him to throw the dog in the garbage can and get in the house. Well, that's when things started going bad around here. Then Ignatius was at college for about 10 years. Mama always went broke. She even had to sell the piano they had. You ought to have seen this girl he picks up at college. I says to myself, well, good. Maybe that Ignatius is going to get married and move out. Was I wrong? All they done is sit in his room. The things I used to hear through my window. Put down that skirt. Get off my bed. And how dare you, I'm a virgin. It was awful. I went on aspirins 24 hours a day. Well, that girl done left. I can't blame her. She must have been funny to hang around with him anyways. The Ignatius Riley story had made Mr. Levy depressed. Well, the woman rushed on, eager for the audience to hear her tale of suffering. This stuff in the paper's the last straw. I'm too old. I've had enough with them people. Well, it's nice talking to you, mister. So long. She raced back into her house and slammed her shutters. Her sudden disappearance confused Mr. Levy as much as her strange biography of Mr. Riley had. What a neighborhood! Levy's Lodge had always been a barrier against knowing people like this. Then Mr. Levy saw the old Plymouth trying to dock at the curb, scraping its hubcaps against its moorings before finally coming to rest. In the rear seat, he saw the silhouette of the big kook. A woman with maroon hair climbed down from the driver's seat and called, "Okay, boy, get out of that car." "Not until you clarify your relationship with that drooling old man," the silhouette answered. "You probably planted him there in front of D.H. Holmes." The rear car door swung rustily open, and a bursting desert boot stepped down onto the running board. The cook's head was bandaged. He looked tired and pale. The woman with the maroon hair had fallen to her knees and was asking the sky, "What have I done wrong, God? Tell me, Lord, I've been good." "You're kneeling on Rex's grave," Ignatius shouted. "Now tell me what you and that debauched McCarthyite have been doing. You probably belong to some secret political cell. No wonder I was trailed last night. Where is the Battaglia matchmaker? Where is she? She must be lashed." What a family, Mr. Levy thought. The mother did look like something of a floozy. Pardon me," Mr. Levy said weakly. "May I speak with you, Mr. Riley?" "What?" Ignatius noticed for the first time the man standing up on the porch. "What do you want with Ignatius?" Mrs. Riley asked the man. Mr. Levy introduced himself. Can we all go in the house?" Mr. Levy asked. I'd like to speak with him privately." She opened the front door, and the three of them stepped into the tiny entrance hall. "What do you want, Mr. Levy?" "Mr. Riley, do you know anything about this?" Ignatius looked at the two letters that Mr. Levy produced from his jacket and said, "Of course not. That is your signature. Leave this house immediately. Mother, this is the fiend who fired me so brutally." You didn't write this?" "Mr. Gonzalez was extremely dictatorial. He would never permit me near a typewriter. You know how possessive he is about that cesspool company of yours." "Mr. Riley, this man wants to sue for $500,000. That could ruin me." "Ain't that awful?" Mrs. Riley exclaimed. "Ignatius, what have you done to this poor man?" As Ignatius was about to discuss the circumspection of his behavior at Levy Pants, the telephone rang. "Hello?" Mrs. Riley said. I'm his mother. Of course I'm sober." She glared at Ignatius. He did? What?" She stared at her son, who was beginning to rasp one paw against the other. "Okay, mister, you'll get your stuff, all except the earring. The bird got that. Okay, of course I can remember what you're telling me. I ain't drunk." Mrs. Riley slammed down the telephone and turned on her son with, "That was the weenie man. You're fired." What a squalid home life, Mr. Levy thought. Mrs. Riley knocked Ignatius on the side of the head with her purse. "Don't hit him," Mr. Levy said. The cook's head was already bandaged. Outside the prize-fighting ring, violence made Mr. Levy ill. This Riley cook was really pitiful. The mother ran around with some old man, drank, and wanted the son out of the way. The dog was probably the only thing the cook had really ever had in his life. Sometimes you have to see a person in his environment to understand him. "Help me, sir," Ignatius slobbered, grabbing at the lapels of Mr. Levy's sports jacket. "Fortuna only knows what she will do to me. I know too much of her sordid activities. I must be eliminated. Have you thought of speaking to the Trixie woman? She knows far more than you suspect." That's what my wife says, but I never believed her. After all, Miss Trixie is so old. I wouldn't think she could write a grocery list." "Old?" Mrs. Riley asked. "Ignatius, you told me Trixie was the name of some cute girl worked at Levy Pants. You told me you two liked each other. Now I find out she's a grandma, can't hardly write. Ignatius!" It was sadder than Mr. Levy had thought at first. The poor cook had tried to make his mother think he had a girlfriend. "Thank you, Mr. Riley," Mr. Levy said. He had to get out of that claustrophobic miniature of a heartbreak house. "If I need you again, I'll call you." "You'll need him again," Mrs. Riley called as he passed her and ran down the front steps. "Whatever it is, Ignatius done it." If resentment had really driven Miss Trixie to writing that letter, then Mrs. Levy was the person responsible for the Abelman suit. Could Miss Trixie write something as intelligible as that letter? Mr. Levy hoped that she could. He drove through Miss Trixie's neighborhood quickly. At the apartment house, he followed the trail of scraps up the stairs to a brown door. He knocked, and Mrs. Levy opened it with, "Look who's back. Have you solved your case?" Miss Trixie, Mr. Levy screamed into her ears, did you write a letter to Abelman's Dry Goods?
What? I must say you people know how to retire a person.
Mr. Levy handed her the letter. She picked a magnifying glass from the floor and studied the letters. When she put down the magnifying glass, she wheezed happily,
You people in trouble now.
But did you write that to Abelman? Mr. Riley said you did.
Who?
Mr. Riley, the big man with the green cap who used to work at Levy Pants. Mr. Levy showed Miss Trixie the photographs in the morning paper. That one there. Miss Trixie applied her magnifying glass to the newspaper and said,
Oh, my goodness. So that's what happened to him.
Poor Gloria. He seemed to be injured.
That's Mr. Riley, is it?
Yes, you remember him, I guess. He says you wrote the letter.
He did?
Gloria Riley wouldn't lie, not Gloria True Blue. Gloria had always been her friend. Miss Trixie tried hazily to recall. Perhaps she had written the letter. All sorts of things happened that she couldn't remember anymore.
Well, I guess I did. Yes, now that you mention it, I guess I did write that. You people deserve it, too. You've driven me crazy these past few years. No retirement, nothing. I must say I hope you lose everything you own.
You wrote that? Mrs. Levy asked. After all I've done for you? You wrote something like that? A viper in our own bosom? You can kiss Levy Pants goodbye, traitor. Miss Trixie smiled. That annoying woman was really getting excited. Gloria had always been her friend. Now the annoying woman would go to the poorhouse, perhaps, but right now she was coming toward her. Miss Trixie started to scream. Let her alone, Mr. Levy said wildly. If it wasn't for your stupid harebrained project, this woman would have been retired long ago. After all those years of predicting things, you turn out to be the one who almost threw Levy Pants down the drain. Mr. Levy watched anger and anxiety play upon his wife's face. For once, she had nothing to say. The girls won't want to know that their dear mother was such a fool. Now, plan to get Trixie over to Lenny's doctor. With her admission and any doctor's testimony, Abelman doesn't have an outside chance on this case. All you'd have to do is drag her into a courtroom and let a judge look at her.
I'm a very attractive woman,
Miss Trixie said automatically. Of course you are, Mr. Levy said, bending down next to her. We're going to retire you, Miss Trixie, with a raise. You've had a lousy deal.
Retirement?
Miss Trixie wheezed.
I must say this is unexpected. Thank goodness.
You'll sign a statement that you wrote that letter, won't you?
Of course I will.
Miss Trixie cried. What a friend Gloria was. Gloria knew how to help her out. Gloria was smart. Thank goodness Gloria had remembered this magic letter.
I'll say anything you want me to.
Everything is suddenly clear to me, Mrs. Levy's bitter voice said behind a pile of newspapers. I'm blackmailed with my two darling girls. I'm pushed out of the way so that you can be a bigger playboy than ever. Now Levy Pants will really be down the drain. You think you have something on me? Oh, I do. And Levy Pants will be down the drain, but not because one of your games wrecked it. Mr. Levy looked over the two letters. This Abelman business has made me think about a lot of things. How come nobody buys our pants? Because they stink. Because they're made from the same patterns my father used 20 years ago. Because that old tyrant wouldn't change a thing in the plant. Because he destroyed whatever initiative I had. Trixie's oddball letter gave me an idea. From now on, we make Bermuda shorts only. Less trouble, higher profits on lower expenditures. I want a whole new line of wash and wear swatches. Levy Pants becomes Levy Shorts. Suddenly, you're very smug, Mrs. Levy said in a voice that bordered on hysteria. What would happen to her? The foundation goes down the drain, too, I guess. Of course not, Mr. Levy smiled inwardly. At last, his wife was rudderless, trying to steer some sort of course on a sea of confession, asking him for directions. We'll make an award. What were they supposed to be for? Meritorious service and bravery? Yes, Mrs. Levy said humbly. Here, this is brave. He picked up the newspaper and pointed to the Negro who stood over the fallen idealist. He gets the first award. What? A criminal with dark glasses? A Bourbon Street character? Please, Gus, not this. Leon Levy is dead only a few years. Let him rest in peace. It's very practical. The kind of maneuver old Leon would have made himself. Most of our workers are Negroes. good public relations, and I'll probably need more and better workers before long. This will make for good employment climate. But not to that. Mrs. Levy sounded as if she were retching. The awards are for nice people. Where's the idealism you're always coming on so strong for? At least you've always said so. Anyway, Riley was worth saving. He led me to the real culprit. Miss Trixie, where's your telephone? Mrs. Levy stood staring at her husband, her colored lashes motionless. His mind grew calm for the first time in several days, and some of the events surrounding the letter began passing in review through his consciousness. He thought of the letter to Abelman, and then his mind was recalling another place where he had heard similar language. It was in the Riley Cook's yard just an hour ago. She must be lashed. Mongoloid Mancuso. So he had written it after all. Mr. Levy looked tenderly down at the accused party snoring. For everyone's sake, he thought, you will have to be declared incompetent and confess, Miss Trixie. You are being framed. Mr. Levy laughed out loud. Why had Miss Trixie confessed so sincerely? Silence! Miss Trixie snapped awake. That Riley Cook had really been worth saving after all. He had saved himself, Miss Trixie, and Mr. Levy, too, in his own kook way. Mrs. Levy would be on a ship soon, destination San Juan. She would visit her mother on the beach, laughing and singing and dancing. Mrs. Levy wouldn't really fit into the Levy Shorts plan. Ignatius spent the day in his room, napping fitfully and attacking his rubber glove during his frequent anxious moments of consciousness. Throughout the afternoon, the telephone in the hall had been ringing, each new ring making him more nervous and anxious. He lunged at the glove, deflowering it, stabbing it, conquering it. Like any celebrity, Ignatius had attracted fans. His mother's jinxed relatives, neighbors, people Mrs. Riley had not seen for years. They had all telephoned. At every ring, Ignatius imagined that it was Mr. Levy calling back, but he always heard his mother say to the caller the lines that were becoming tearfully standard. Ain't this awful? What I'm going to do now, our name is really ruined. When Ignatius could stand it no longer, he would billow out of his room in search of a Dr. Nutt. If he chanced to meet his mother in the hall, she would not look at him, but rather study the fleecy spheres of lint that drifted along the floor in her son's wake. There seemed to be nothing that he could say to her. Once a person was asked to step into this brutal century, anything could happen. Everywhere there lurked pitfalls, especially Myrna Minkoff. The musky minx must be dealt with. Somehow, someday she must pay. Whatever happened, he must attend to her, even if the revenge took years, and he had to stalk her through decades from one coffee shop to another, from one folk-singing orgy to another, from subway train to pad to cotton field to demonstration. Ignatius invoked an elaborate Elizabethan curse upon Myrna and, rolling over, frantically abused the glove once more. Mrs. Riley listened to the squeaking and belching emanating from her son's room and wondering whether on top of everything else he were having a fit. But she didn't want to look at Ignatius. Whenever she heard his door opening, she tried to run to her room to avoid him. She could hardly imagine the punishment given someone who had done something bad enough to be worth $500,000. Wouldn't this be fine? Ignatius in jail. There was only one way to save him. She carried the telephone as far down the hall as she could, and for the fourth time that day, she dialed Santa Battaglia's number. I'm afraid Ignatius is in worse trouble than just a picture in the paper, Mrs. Riley whispered. Santa, you was right all along. Ignatius got to go to the charity. Now is the time. He's my own child, but we got to get him treated for his own sake. Mrs. Riley tried to think of the phrase that was always used in courtroom dramas on TV. We got to get him declared temporary insane. Oh, Lord. Now let off the line, babe, and get over here. I'm calling the charity right now. Get out of that house fast. Mrs. Riley looked out the front shutters. It was very dark now, which was good. The neighbors would not see too much if they took Ignatius away during the night. When she got to the front door, she stopped. She couldn't say goodbye to Ignatius like this. He was her child. She went up to his bedroom door and listened to the wildly twanging bed springs as they reached a crescendo. She knocked, but there was no answer. Ignatius, she called sadly. What do you want? A breathless voice asked at last. I'm going out, Ignatius. I wanted to say goodbye. The door opened slowly. Ignatius stuck his fat gray face into the hall. His mother's eyes watered when she saw the bandage. Now kiss me, honey.
I'm sorry it all had to end like this.
What do all of these lachrymose cliches mean? Ignatius asked suspiciously.
You was right, Ignatius. You can't go to work. I should have known that. I should have tried to get that debt paid off some other way.
A tear slid from Mrs. Riley's eyes and washed a little trail of clean skin through the powder.
If that Mr. Levy called, don't answer the phone. I'm going to take care of you.
Oh, my God, Ignatius bellowed. Now I'm really in trouble. Goodness knows what you're planning. Where are you going?
Stay inside and don't answer the phone. You won't have to worry about Mr. Levy, son. I'm going to fix you up. Just remember, your poor mama's got your welfare at heart.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Don't never be mad at me, honey.
Mrs. Riley embraced Ignatius and kissed him on his mustache. She released him and ran to the front door, where she turned and called,
I'm sorry if I run into that building, Ignatius. I love you.
The shutters slammed and she was gone. Come back! Ignatius thundered. He ripped at the shutters, but the old Plymouth, one of its front tires fenderless and exposed as if it were a stock car, was rumbling to life. Come back, please! Mother! His mother had something up her sleeve, some clumsy plan, some scheme that would ruin him forever. He found Santa Battaglia's number and dialed it. He must speak with his mother. This is Ignatius Riley, he said when Santa had answered. Is my mother coming down there tonight? No, she ain't, Santa replied coldly. I ain't spoke with your mama all day. Ignatius hung up. Something was going on. He had heard his mother saying Santa over the telephone at least 2 or 3 times during the day. And that last telephone call, that whispered communication just before his mother had left. At once Ignatius suspected the reason for his mother's emotional farewell, for its finality. She had already told him that the Battaglia matchmaker had advised a vacation for him in the psychiatric ward at Charity. Everything made sense. In a psychiatric ward, he would not be liable to prosecution by Abelman and Levy, or whoever it was would push the case. Perhaps both of them would sue him. Abelman for character defamation, and Levy for forgery. To his mother's limited mind, the psychiatric ward would seem an attractive alternative. It was just like her, with the very best of intentions, to have her child harnessed by a straitjacket and electrocuted by shock treatments. Of course, his mother might not be considering this at all. However, whenever dealing with her, it was always best to prepare for the worst. In the United States, you're innocent till they prove you guilty. Perhaps Miss Trixie had confessed. Ignatius would not be tossed into a mental clinic while legally he was still innocent of having written the letter. His mother typically had responded to Mr. Levy's visit in the most irrational and emotional manner possible. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to fix you up. Yeah. She would fix him up all right. Some cretin psychoanalyst would attempt to comprehend the singularity of his worldview. In frustration, the psychoanalyst would have him crammed into a cell 3 feet square. No, that was out of the question. Jail was preferable. There, they only limited you physically. In a mental ward, they tampered with your soul and worldview and mind. He would never tolerate that. And his mother had been so apologetic about this mysterious protection she was going to give him. All signs pointed to Charity Hospital. Oh, Fortuna, you wretch! Escape! Escape! There was a slipshod frenzy of dressing. The red flannel nightshirt sailed up and hung on the chandelier. He jammed his toes into the tweed trousers, which he could hardly button at the waist. Shirt, cap, overcoat. Ignatius put them on blindly and ran into the hall, careening against the narrow walls. He was just reaching for the front door when 3 loud knocks cracked against the shutters. Mr. Levy returned. His valve sent out a distress signal that established communication with his hands. He scratched the bumps on his paws and peered through the shutters, expecting to see several hirsute brutes from the hospital. There on the porch stood Myrna, in a shapeless olive-drab corduroy carcoat. Her black hair was braided into a pigtail that twisted under one ear and fell on her breast. A guitar was slung over her shoulders. Ignatius was about to burst through the shutters, splintering slats and latches, and wrap that one hemp-like pigtail around her throat until she turned blue. But reason one, he was not looking at Myrna. He was looking at an escape route. Fortuna had relented. She was not depraved enough to end this vicious cycle by throttling him in a straitjacket, by sealing him up in a cement block tomb lighted by fluorescent tubes. Fortuna wished to make amends. Ignatius, are you in that dump? Myrna demanded in her flat, direct, slightly hostile voice. She beat on the shutters again, squinting through her black-rimmed glasses. "Listen! I can tell there's somebody in there. I heard you stomping around in the hall. Open up these crummy shutters." Yes, I'm here," Ignatius cried. He tore at the shutters and pushed them open. "Thank Fortuna you've come." "Jesus, you look terrible. Like you're having a nervous breakdown or something. Why the bandage? Ignatius, what's the matter? Look how much weight you've gained." "I've gone through hell," Ignatius slobbered, pulling Myrna into the hall by the sleeve of her coat. "Why did you step out of my life, you minx? Your new hairdo is fascinating and cosmopolitan." He snatched at her pigtail and pressed it to his wet mustache, kissing it vigorously. "The scent of soot and carbon in your hair excites me with suggestions of glamorous Gotham. We must leave immediately. I must go flower in Manhattan." "I knew something was wrong, but this... You are really in bad shape, Ig." "Quickly, to a motel. My natural impulses are screaming for release. Do you have any money with you?" "Don't put me on," Myrna said angrily. She grabbed the soggy pigtail from Ignatius's paws and threw it over her shoulder onto the guitar, where it landed with a twang. "Look, Ignatius, I'm beat. I've been on the road since 9 o'clock yesterday morning. As soon as I mailed you that letter about the peace party routine, I said to myself, Myrna, listen, this guy needs more than just a letter. He needs your help. He's sinking fast. Are you dedicated enough to save a mind rotting right before your eyes? Are you committed enough to salvage the wreckage of that mentality?" I came out of the post office and got in my car and just started driving. All night, straight. I mean, the more I thought about that wild peace party telegram, the more upset I got. Apparently, Myrna was very hard up for causes in Manhattan. "I don't blame you," Ignatius cried. "Wasn't that telegram horrible? A deranged fantasy. I've been in the depths of depression for weeks. After all these years that I've stuck by my mother's side, she had decided to get married and wants me out of the way. We must leave. I can't stand this house another moment." "You poor kid. What have you been doing, Ignatius? Just lying around in your room, dozing off?" "Yes, for weeks. I've been immobilized by the neurotic apathy. Do you remember the fantasy letter about the arrest and the accident? I wrote that when my mother first met this debauched old man. It was then that my equilibrium started to fail. Since then, it's been a continuous downward movement culminating in the schizophrenia of the peace party. Those signs outside were just one physical manifestation of my inward torment. My psychotic desire for peace was no doubt a wishful attempt to end the hostilities which have been existing in this little house. I can only be grateful that you were perceptive enough to analyze my fantasy life as embodied in my letters. Thank goodness they were distress signals written in a code which you could understand. I told you to get out of this place a long time ago. Come on, let's get you packed." Myrna's monotonous voice was growing enthusiastic. "This is fantastic. I knew you'd have to break away sooner or later to preserve your mental health." "If I had listened to you earlier, I wouldn't have had to go through this horror." Ignatius embraced Myrna and pressed her and her guitar flatly against the wall. He could see that she was beside herself with joy over finding a legitimate cause, a bona fide case history, a new movement. "There'll be a place for you in heaven, my minx. Now we must dash." He tried to drag her out the front door, but she said, "Don't you want to pack anything?" "Oh, of course. There are all my notes and jottings. We must never let them fall into the hands of my mother. She may make a fortune from them. It would be too ironic." "I can't believe that I'm actually taking you out of this dungeon, this hole." "It is unbelievable, isn't it, to think that I fought your wisdom for years? We are going to have the most fantastic time in New York, honestly." "I can't wait," Ignatius said, packing his scarf and cutlass. "The Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, the thrill of opening night on Broadway with my favorite music, comedy stars, gab sessions in the Village over espresso with challenging contemporary minds." Aren't you even going to leave your mother some very bitter note, some articulate protest or something?" "It'd be hardly worthwhile. She'd be weeks in comprehending it. Please, don't drop that loose-leaf folder. It contains the journal, sociological fantasy in which I've been working. It's my most commercial effort. Wonderful film possibilities at the hands of a Walt Disney or a George Pal." "Ignatius!" Myrna stopped at the doorway, her arms laden with tablets, and moved her colorless lips for a moment before she spoke, as if she were formulating an address. Her tired, highway-drugged eyes searched Ignatius's face through the sparkling lenses. "This is a very meaningful moment. I feel as if I'm saving someone." You are. Now we must flee. Please, we'll chat later." Ignatius pushed past her and lumbered down to the car, opening the rear door of the little Renault and climbing in among the placards and piles of pamphlets that covered the seat. Are you going to bug me like this? Myrna glared at the green cap in the rearview mirror. I mean, I'd rather like to know. Oh, my valve! Ignatius gasped. Please don't make a scene. My psyche will crumble entirely after the assaults it had recently received. Ignatius, all at once you're your old horrible self. All at once I think I'm making a very big mistake. A mistake? Of course not, Ignatius said sweetly, but watch out for that ambulance. We don't want to begin our pilgrimage with an accident. As the ambulance passed, Ignatius hunched over and saw Charity Hospital printed on its door. The rotating red light atop the ambulance splashed over the Renault for a brief moment as the two vehicles passed each other. Ignatius felt insulted. He had expected a massive barred truck. They had underestimated him in sending out an old, well-used Cadillac ambulance. He would easily have been able to smash all of those windows. Then the glowing Cadillac fins were 2 blocks behind them, and Myrna was turning onto St. Charles Avenue. Now that Fortuna had saved him from one cycle, where would she spin him now? The new cycle would be so different from anything he had ever known. Myrna prodded and shifted the Renault through the city traffic masterfully, weaving in and out of impossibly narrow lanes until they were clear of the last twinkling streetlight of the last swampy suburb. Then they were in darkness in the center of the salt marshes. Ignatius looked out at the highway marker that reflected their headlights. US 11. The marker flew past. He rolled down the window an inch or two and breathed the salt air blowing in over the marshes from the Gulf. He stared gratefully at the back of Myrna's head, at the pigtail that swung innocently at his knee. Gratefully. How ironic, Ignatius thought. Taking the pigtail in one of his paws, he pressed it warmly to his wet mustache. Copyright 1989, Dove Books on Tape, Incorporated.